Welcome to Jacksonville Buzz. I'm your host, Chris Budihas, and joining me in the studio, I have Connor Overbay with Who Are You podcast. So who are you? Tell us about yourself there, Connor.
Oh, really? It's a loaded question. So who I am is basically I sit down with local business owners, entrepreneurs, and artists, and we sit down, have a conversation. We get to know their background of who they are a little bit in the beginning half of the podcast, and then the second half we get into their business. You know, talking numbers, how they are different from other companies, and then we just overall support and promote them throughout the week on all of our social media channels.
Oh wow, that's great. So how long have you been around as far as the podcast?
So the podcast is going on 3 years now. So
wow. Congratulations.
Thank you, sir. I appreciate it. You know, it's been a lot of hard work. I've been very lucky to have a wife that helps support me through the recording and, you know, doing some behind the scenes.
It's always a good thing.
Yeah, I'll say behind every strong man's an even stronger woman.
Absolutely.
So I've been doing it for about 3 years now. We post an episode every single Monday on whether YouTube, Apple, Spotify, and basically just keep on going every single week. We're very lucky with the amazing people here in Jacksonville who are willing to give us their time, and we've really thoroughly enjoyed it.
Yeah, so tell us about some of the interesting people you've met, you know, and why you're doing this podcast.
Yeah, so we've actually sat down with a bunch of interesting people throughout Jacksonville, whether it's a small company to larger companies. Like I was telling you about Jay Stowe, who is the intern CEO for JEA, our electric company here in Jacksonville. Raymond Tavares, who is a pro UFC fighter from Jacksonville, and then Neil Sterling, one of our old tight ends for the Jaguars as well. So some big names, but you know, there's a lot of amazing people here, and everybody has a great story.
Yeah, and I mean, it's not just sports, not just business, but really anybody that has a story, they come on and they get to kind of break it out and tell them like, hey, this is my journey and this is how I did what I did. I imagine there's some lessons. So how have you changed as a result of doing these interviews?
I've changed a lot, to be honest with you. Through like another key topic on our podcast is, you know, men talking about things they've been through or mental health situations and everything, and being open and honest with it. Because
do men talk about things like this?
So they do. I'd say it's definitely
it's
definitely a newer thing. But working on that, and
awesome.
it's helped change my perspective on things. You know, maybe I have a bad day at work, or I've had something that's really small in the grand scheme of things, and sit down and listen to what people have gone through and how they made it to where they are today. It's helped me become a kinder person, change my perspective on life, and also also pushes me to work harder than what I do now.
That's awesome. So like if I was or somebody else was, they want to be on the podcast, like what's your format like?
So if they wanted to be on the podcast, reaching out through social media or my email, it's going to be whoareyoupod@yahoo.com, and I answer and every single message that comes through, whether it's the social media or the email. And basically all I ask is just kind of give me a general background story of whether it's a business or what your background is, and then we can kind of figure it out from there.
Yeah, and how long do the podcasts typically last?
So the podcast usually lasts about around an hour, if not a little bit longer. You know, if it's a great conversation and they have a lot to tell, I'm more than happy to go as long as they possibly want, but I would say genuinely an hour to an hour and a half.
Yeah. No, I can imagine. I mean, you're sitting here. It's amazing how much you can learn from other people. So you're absorbing all this information. So, so what does the future look like for Who Are You podcast? Or, you know, you got a full docket between now and the end of the year, or are you looking for folks to come on?
So I'm always looking for people. I'm always more than happy to have people reach out and, you know, ask me some questions about the podcast. But what I generally do is I reach out to a lot of people, whether through the social media or the email. And basically what I like to do is bank up a couple episodes in a row because, you know, I do work a full day job, and gives me time to edit and do all that stuff. But I'm more than happy to sit down with anybody at any time. You know, I usually do it after work or on the weekends just to make sure everybody has free time, no one's stressed about time and everything. But really my main goal for the podcast is to continue growing, get in front of more people, and just become more of a beacon in Jacksonville to help promote local businesses, artists, and entrepreneurs here.
That's great. Do you foresee just staying with this local footprint for now, and you look at, you know, potentially in the future, 5-10 years down the road, expanding beyond Northeast Florida, Southeast Georgia? Or?
Yes, sir. So I definitely would love to, you know, expand throughout the United States and really the world in general. My main goal is to make it to my main source of income, and also be able to go around the world and, you know, bring the podcast to like Texas, or even go to Europe and do conversations over there, because there's so much, as you said, amazing things to learn from so many different kinds of people.
What's crazy, you know, you're like truly an entrepreneur. You know, you're taking risk. Of course, now you got a full-time job, but if you could pivot this side hustle into your full-time job, you're kind of living that American dream. That's pretty awesome. It's funny. I years ago when I exercise, I listen to music. Then I'm like, wait a second, I'm going to exercise my body. Let me exercise my brain. So I went to podcast.
Yes, sir.
It's amazing how much information you can absorb. And one that I've listened to regularly is called the side hustle, and so you learn like, hey, by taking your passion and turn it into your occupation, if you can make ends meet, it's actually gives you a very rich life, because some people go to work and they don't enjoy it as much as they probably should, and you obviously enjoy what you're doing with your podcast, and that's awesome.
Yes, sir. I'm very lucky to work at a job that I do thoroughly enjoy as well. My day job is great, but the podcast is really a main passion of mine. People are a passion of mine as well. I've been very lucky to meet people and have people get vulnerable with me. They're telling me their life story and being able to share things that as much as the podcast is for the person I'm interviewing, I'm hoping at least it just helps one person, whether it's figure out, some part about their business, some part about their life, and help them grow as a person.
That's gigantic. So one more time, how do they find you?
So if you guys want to find me, it's going to be Who Are You Pod on Instagram, social media, so Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, Twitter, and then for the email,
it's X now.
Oh, excuse me, you're right. I always say that on the podcast. I'm like X. That's right. So Who Are You Pod for all social media platforms, and then if you want to get into contact with me, that's a perfect way of doing it. Or the email to me, whoareyoupod@yahoo.com, and I'm always the one who answers any questions. And you're talking to me whenever you reach out to those pages.
Awesome. Connor, we're going to take all your information and your links, and we're going to shove them into the show notes here so everybody can access this information and get in contact with you to get on the docket to be interviewed by Connor. And I think of it as Young Guns. We'll make you famous, so to speak. So that's awesome.
Yes,
Thanks
sir.
again for coming in.
Thank you so much for your time, Chris. I appreciate it.
Hey, folks, if you like what you heard, please share us. Connect with us on LinkedIn and all other forms of social media, and live with gratitude. See you on our next segment.